Welcome everyone to our first Chea Chat. Welcome. And I have the distinct honor and pleasure of interviewing a gentleman I consider a friend. I've known him for a while. His name is Oscar Wei. He's the Senior Economist and Director of Research at the California Association of Realtors. Oscar, welcome to my first foray into this thing. We're calling it Chea Chats. And thank you for agreeing to do this and being my first victim. No, my first interview.
Thank you, Will. Thank you for inviting me. I'm honored to be the first guest on your Chea Chat. I mean, I love to. You know, I want to share information with your friends, your realtors, your clients. I mean, this is a great opportunity. I think we should talk about what's going on with the market. And I'm an economist, so I'm going to show you. I'm going to show some slides, give you some numbers, and maybe some statistics on economy and the market. If you want to, if you don't mind me sharing, because I'm going to have a lot of stuff.
Not. Please go for it. You've got the con, my friend. You've got the con.
All right. Well, then I need some tools. I'm going to share with you some slides, if you don't mind.
Yes.
I know just looking at my face could be entertaining, but of course I want to show them some slides to show some.
Because they really want to see this too. No, let's go. Let's go to the slides, my friend.
So let's go to the slides. Let me show you some slides. Give me a second.
Sure.
And tell me if you're seeing some slides in PowerPoint format.
I've got them.
All right. So I'm going to make it a little bigger, and I'm going to blow things up a little bit. Give me 1 second. Here we go. So I have a few slides, and I'm not going to cover everything, but I'm going to start with some background information. I mean, of course, this is a challenging time right now, right?
Yeah.
And things have changed compared to a couple months ago. Starting at I think the end of February or so, we started changing a little bit as far as the economy is concerned, and also the market because of the coronavirus pandemic. Things are a little different. The economy obviously has shut down. I wouldn't necessarily say completely, but close to complete shutdown. I know the shelter-in-place order was first implemented in the Bay Area, right?
Yep.
And I think it started in March 15th, 16th or so, something like that. And then it extended to the state as a whole. And after that, things just, took a sharp turn. Now, I'm going to show you some statistics, some slides to show you first how bad the economy have been hit. There are some additional slides, but I'm not going to go through those. But, when you look at the economy, a lot of time, you hear from news about, okay, GDP, about economic growth and all that stuff. Those are based on retail sales, based on business investments, right? And if I ask you about retail sales pretty much have dropped down significantly, right? You and I might have a tough time going to restaurants and dining in the restaurants now because of all the shutdown.
Right.
Going to malls, I don't think we're going to malls at all. All the stores, most of the stores are closed. We probably have heard a lot of news about some major department store going bankrupt, or maybe have to file bankruptcy. So if you take a look at the slide, what I'm showing up here, it tells you a pretty good story. Look at this is a slide that shows you the retail sales change from February to March. In the latest month, that we got was March statistics. Take a look at the numbers here. I'm kind of using my mouse to circle it. Clothing, accessories, retail stores drop about 50%, in terms of sales. Dining or restaurants drop about 26.5% or so. Of course, gasoline station also drop about 18% or so.
Wow. That's gonna get even wilder when basically crude futures are worthless right now.
Exactly. I mean, this could actually change, the long-term pattern. But before we even consider that, and you're right, it could actually get worse even for the next couple months or so. Why? Because remember, the first 2 weeks of March, we still had, quite a bit of economic activity. Yep. It's only after the 15th, 16th, or even at the state level, 19 or 20, that we actually started seeing some drop. So these number compared to, let's say, April number will be even worse. April numbers will be even worse. Now, there's places where we, are buying a little bit more stuff. Food and beverage, meaning grocery store. We probably, some of us are guilty of stocking up, right? I did too. I have to admit, I went to grocery store and kind of stock up some stuff.
We were getting earnest money deposits in rolls of toilet paper.
I got some toilet paper too. I got some toilet paper towels. I got a lot of Clorox for cleaning supplies and stuff. So and I've heard and when you go to Costco, a lot of people like to go to Costco. There are lines. You have to wait. There's a 6 feet, of course, social distancing. So those food and beverages actually has gone up. Now, I'm not going to go, food and beverage probably include alcohol. I'm not going to go there. I've heard alcohol consumption actually has gone up. That's what I heard.
That's what our friends tell us, Oscar. Our friends are telling that to us.
Now, but even with an increase in, food and beverage and general merchandise, take a look at, the top line here. Retail sales did drop. It dropped about 9%. What is 9% though? I mean, 8.7 to be exact. What is 8%? You have to have some kind of historical context to actually to do some comparison, right? To see how bad it is. Yeah. Well, here's a chart. Here's a chart that shows you data going back to 1992. Now, what I showed you earlier in the previous chart was a chart that shows the month-to-month percent change. So this is what it's showing right now. The month-to-month percent change. Look at the very last line. It dropped 8.7%, right?
Yeah.
Last recession, remember last recessions? It was what, 2008, 2009, right around here. Look at what happened. 2008, 2009, the month-to-month percent change did drop quite significantly too, but only by about 4%. I use the word only, quote unquote only, because compared to what we're seeing now, it pales.
Yeah.
So when was the last time we actually had 8 or 9% drop? Do you want to take a guess?
I'm going to say Great Recession? No, probably Great Depression. Maybe.
Well, you're close as far as years are concerned. About 1940s.
Wow.
When we had World War II.
World War II.
That was when we had actually a month-to-month drop of close to 8 or 9%. Now, if you look at it that way, that's what 80 years ago.
Yeah.
We've never had such a sudden, abrupt disruption to the economy. So it's a big deal. It's a huge problem to the economy. Now, let me put things into perspective also. Now, just looking at that retail sales number may or may not mean a whole lot, but I mean, looking at that with historical context, it shows a little bit more seriousness to the economic disruptions. But let's show something a little bit more closer to home. Let's take a look at California. That 8 or 9% drop in retail sales is just for the month of March. But if you look at the state as a whole, for California, every single day, if we look at just each day with those shutdowns, we're actually losing, out of the $8.8 billion daily output that we have on a regular basis, we're losing about $2.8 billion. That's significant. That's about 32%.
I mean, and this is the state of California. We are actually either 6th or 7th largest economy in the world. I mean, that's right. That is mind-boggling. Wow.
That is. Now, and take a look at this chart here. This chart shows you the top 5. And obviously, California is the top. Now, not in dollar terms, but in terms of percent of output that we lose on a daily basis, it's actually one of the top.
Right.
And I'm not surprised because we have a lot of closures. We have a lot of shutdowns. Californians like to go out to eat. We like to social, right? And of course, we do have a lot of theme parks and stuff like that. You probably know Disneyland and many of those theme parks got closed. But it's not only that. Are you a basketball fan?
Of course I am.
You already know that the NBA shut down the season, right?
Yeah.
Since the beginning of March, when one of the players got tested positive, we got shut down. So NBA games got shut down. We don't know exactly when it's going to come back, probably what, in maybe August. He talked about August or so.
Yeah.
But it's not only NBA. You know, I think NHL, hockey, and football. Everything got, you know, kind of shut down for now
And
until further notice.
baseball is probably going to be the one that's most affected because they depend on the fans coming in for revenue. I think I read somewhere more than any of the four major sports. It's definitely baseball, and some of the things that they've been bouncing around. I mean, it's crazy. They want to do um, the entire league in Arizona with everybody social distancing, but with no fans in the stands. I mean,
That's
it's
going to
going to
be
be very
tough.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. You know, when you're playing without fans, it's hard. I mean, I think they threw the ideas around before in NBA, for example, but it's going to be tough. I believe today is, you know, they're doing the virtual NFL draft,
Draft.
right? I think I heard. I didn't go into detail. Let's not go into detail on that for now.
Yeah.
We'll have just another discussion on that. But if you look at the daily GDP, the daily economic output, we're losing a lot. We're losing a lot. And at the macro level, if you look at it from the macro level, that's already a significant impact. What about if we look at it from a more micro level? A micro level means if we look at unemployment, if we look at how many people actually file unemployment claims, we're losing 30% of our output. There are some, you know, damage, not only to the economy, but also to people who work for those restaurants, work for those, you know, NBA leagues, work for those retail stores.
Yep.
In fact, what happened is, you know, with that 30% loss in output, we actually have been losing millions and millions of jobs. In the last 4 weeks, um, we lost a little bit more than 20 million, 22 million jobs to be exact. If you look at the unemployment claims, every single week of the last 4 weeks, we have more than 3 million. And last week was 5 million. The week before then was 6.6 million, and then 6.8 million. The very first week of the first 4 weeks was 3.3. That's a significant number. We've never seen anything like this before in just a short period of time. Again, let's, you know, kind of do some comparison. You know, how many jobs do you think we lost in the last recessions, meaning in 2008, 2009?
Well, you know what? I don't want to guess, but I'm gonna sense a theme here that we have definitely outpaced that over the last 4 weeks than we did. I would want to say over the total amount of time that we were in the last recession.
Mm-hmm. Probably. Okay, so let me just give you some number. Now, here's a recession right here, right?
Yep.
2008 through 2010. Now that is a 2-year period of time. In a 2-year period of time, we lost about 37 million. That's a large number, but we lost that in 2 years.
Right.
We lost 22 million in 4 weeks. So we actually lost more than half in 2 weeks and in 4 weeks. So that's significant. Now I will say this. Now we're not going to continue to see millions and millions of job losses. I think most likely we are probably going to see the number slowing down. But I think in the next few weeks or so, we probably will continue to see millions of job losses or jobless claims. When it's all said and done, I think we probably will see the number probably about 37 million. And then towards the end of the year, we probably will come back, you know, we'll probably slow down, but we'll still see a big number. Now, just I know this number may not necessarily mean a whole lot by itself, but if we put it in the context of, again, unemployment rate, you probably know, yeah, unemployment rate before the coronavirus, it was below 4% or
Mm-hmm.
so, right? Probably heard on the news, about 4%. What exactly is 20 million in terms of the labor force, in terms of 20 million translated into unemployment rate? Well, the total labor force is about 165, 166 million. So if you look at it from that perspective, that's about what, 15%,
Wow.
14% or so.
Yeah.
So what, a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, we had 4%. Now we have 14, 15%. You can see how fast we have been growing in
Yeah.
terms of unemployment. It's hard. Now, of course, the economy has been dropping and has been showing, some pretty significant damage. It affects every industry, including our housing market. Let's take a look at how it affects our housing market. Well, have you been looking at some of our monthly statistics? We released our latest stuff last week.
Yep, of course I do. You know this.
Yeah, and you probably know at the beginning of the year, first couple months or so, we were doing fine.
Yep.
Now, I will go into a little bit more detail for Santa Clara, but let's take a look at the state number. March number, it looks like, because we said, the last 2 weeks of March, we actually had some some shutdown, right?
Hmm.
But if you take a look at these numbers, the March sales, it did drop on a year-over-year basis. It dropped 6.1%. But because of the first couple months, first couple months of the year, we actually were doing okay. So take a look at these numbers. The year-to-date number, which means the first 3 months of the year, it's still doing fine.
Yeah.
It's still showing a positive number because the first 2 months we were increasing from the year before by about 8% or 9% or so. So even though we have a drop in March, it was still better than the first quarter of last year. But we did have in March compared to February, we actually dropped about 11% on a month-to-month basis. That actually is the largest drop that we had in going back to August 2007. So that's significant.
Wow.
So keep in mind though, that drop is only basically the damage is because of the last 2 weeks of March. And just those last 2 weeks actually drag us down to a negative level. So you can see, and I can tell you, in April and May, probably we'll see a steeper drop
Hmm.
in sales. What about price? I know, Bay Area, San Francisco, Bay Area, Southern California may be a little different. And we may actually not see dip in price from monthly statistics. But if you look at the number that we have here, we're still showing an increase in March. You might ask, why is that? I mean, we have a slowdown in the market, right? But a lot of these are closed sales. So, a lot of those closed sales, they were probably negotiated back in maybe beginning of February or
Yeah.
maybe end of January or so. So it may not have affected. And median price at the state level, it was still above 600,000. I know compared to the Bay Area, this number is actually a very affordable number.
You could probably get a half bathroom for that now in Palo Alto.
Or maybe a really small units of 500 or so, maybe even less than that. Who knows? So we are seeing, we continue to see some increase in price. Now, this is you can say that this is pre-COVID-19. And let's look at Bay Area. If you look at Bay Area, though, Bay Area might tell a slightly different story. Sales actually in the first couple months or first 3 months or so, we actually see some decline. Now, this is March, so of course, this is an anomaly. This actually dropped quite significantly, but even before then, we were actually a little slow in the Bay Area as a whole. And I know Bay Area, there are 9 counties. When I refer to Bay Area, I'm referring to the 9-county definition. Right. And that 9-county definition, some areas are doing better, some areas are not. I think when you look at the Napa, Solano, Sonoma, those areas might be doing a little bit better in terms of sales as compared to the other 6 major counties at the beginning of the year. But even though if we were to try to separate them out, those 6 counties that I mentioned, they were not really dropping that much. They were, at the beginning of the year, maybe just a little slow, but it's picking up.
Right.
And let's hone in at for Santa Clara County. Let me just show you Santa Clara County. Now I'm going to show you, some additional city level stuff as well in a minute. Right. But let's look at Santa Clara. Now you're in the area, and tell me if I'm right now that, for the first quarter or so, for the first 3 months of the year, prices for the state as a whole seem to be actually doing okay.
Yeah, we're doing.
And if
I
you
mean,
look
here in
at,
the Bay Area in Santa Clara County, we were doing more than okay. We were still, we were starting to heat up again.
yeah, yeah, I mean, I'm sure it has a lot to do with, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but it probably has something to do with low interest rates as well.
Low interest rates, low inventory, so that, and we still had a pretty good pent up demand from the previous year. So people were still going out there and making, multiple offers. I mean, may not
Yeah,
have been 10 or 15, but you were still getting 4 or 5 multiple
and
offers.
and the economy is humming along, really
Yeah.
well, in the first couple months, end of last year, it's still doing very well. And as such, you can see, even for March, we're still increasing in terms of price by about, 7 or 8%. I think, it may not be a lot of overbidding, in the first couple months or so of the year, but it's still doing a pretty good job. Look at this number. It's at the beginning of the year, it's actually improving. So in terms of actual growth, we actually, I think, based on the Santa Clara number, county-wide number, we saw an increase of close to 10% in February, and then another 7 or 8% in March. So as far as price is concerned, it looks like, it's still holding up okay. Now again, these are prices negotiated prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm going to show you some statistics on for individual counties, for individual cities. So these numbers look right to you. These are quarterly numbers, by the way. These numbers look right to you. I'm sorry, I hate to make you put your glasses
No, no,
on.
no. It's fine. It's fine. I love these numbers. Yeah, those numbers look like they're about right. That's for sure.
And I do want to point out, if you look at, how the quarter to quarter, how the first quarter compared to the same quarter of last year. Now, most cities look like, they are increasing a little bit. Take a look at the dark blue line compared to the light blue line or light blue bar. Look like many cities are improving.
Yep.
As far as price is concerned, I know Los Gatos may have dipped a little bit, but Los Gatos may the price may fluctuate because of the number of observations and things like that. But it looks like, many cities in Santa Clara seem to be actually continue to increase in terms of price. That may not be like significant increase like 15% or so, but it looks like, we're seeing some price movement, upward movement before COVID-19. Now, if we really want to look at, the impact of the COVID-19, then we probably should look at, more on a weekly basis,
Mm-hmm.
because, the monthly stuff may not necessarily show the dynamics within, the last couple weeks or so. So what we did was we actually look at the weekly stuff. We look at the average daily close sales for individual region and for individual week, and show you the difference. So here's what we have been tracking: weekly numbers going back to March 1st. And we have been tracking for the last 7 weeks or so. The latest statistics that we have is from April 12th to 17th.
Okay.
So you can see, now let's look at the state first. You can see that there's a significant drop
Yeah.
on a weekly basis from 631 to 461. This is the average daily close sales. Drop maybe about 20 to 30% for the state as a whole. And if you look at the Bay Area, drop from 104 to 81, so about 20% or so. Now the pace for Bay Area seems like it's not dropping as fast as the state as a whole.
All right.
So in a way, that's actually seemed to be working out better for the Bay Area. Southern California drop a little bit more. Now let's take a look at the next one. If we want to look at it by county, it looks like, for Santa Clara County, it's actually holding up well. The good thing is, if you look at the Bay Area counties, now I showed you earlier that it dropped by about 20% or so as far as close sales, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at these individual counties, you can see for Santa Clara, it actually, based on the first week of the month of March compared to the latest week, it actually only dropped slightly. But what I want to point out to you is you can see for some of these counties, we're actually seeing a little bit of a bounce back. Santa
Yep.
Clara specifically. Looks like it's bouncing back a little bit after sliding for like 3 or 4 weeks or so. Maybe, just maybe, this could be a 1 week blip, but it could also be things are kind of calming down a little bit, maybe bouncing back a little bit.
Well,
But before we make that,
hopefully in a couple of weeks when we do this again, we'll be able to look at those numbers and say, hey, this is what we thought, and what do the numbers actually look like?
yeah, well, and I can show you those numbers again, when we talk again in a couple of weeks or so. But let's, fast forward a little bit and take a look at, these are the historical, these are the percent change numbers for the last few weeks or so. I do want to point out, for Santa Clara, it shows that it's actually up, 12.5% compared to the previous week. Now, these are week-to-week comparison. So, but it's only just 1 week of comparison. So, of
Right.
course, it's too early to tell. But I want to show you some other things as well. Closed sales, as we said, they were negotiated possibly prior to the COVID-19. So a better reflection of the market conditions, maybe what's going on with pending sales, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pending sales, if you look at the state level, it dropped even more.
Wow.
And I expect that to be the case. Drop from 744 to 441, that's probably about 35 to 40%. And Bay Area actually dropped pretty significantly as far as pending sales is concerned. So, if you look at it from that perspective, because pending sales they're going to turn into closed sales.
Right.
So with that perspective, you can see that maybe we're not out of the wood completely yet. 121 dropped down to 65, meaning about 50%, close to 50%. But again, I do want to point out again, like closed sales, just like closed sales, look at what happened for pending sales in the last few months or last few weeks.
Got a little bit of an upward trend there.
Or at least it's bottoming out. It's kind of staying at that same level, and it could be bouncing back. I mean, we can only drop so much, right?
Right.
Because after a while, we should start bouncing back. And we are seeing some bounce back in some areas. Look at Alameda. It's showing some upward trend. Contra Costa start showing a little bit more improvement in the last week or so. What about Santa Clara?
Yes.
Look at Santa Clara.
Love
It
it.
started picking up. I think part of the reason is, like you and many of the realtors might have already figured out, okay, well, we can just do some virtual tours, right? We can figure out how to do things, virtually. So, and because the Bay Area got hit first before some other parts of the state, I think Bay Areas actually are figuring out a little faster.
Yep.
So let's take a look. I'm going to skip this one. I'm not going to focus on those numbers. Now, for the state as a whole, we can look at pending sales, but we also want to look at something else. Some other indicators like mortgage applications. If you look at mortgage applications, look at what happened. Mortgage application, these are some statistics I just picked up today. We do continue to see some drop off in mortgage applications at the state and on year-over-year basis.
Now, are these purchase or are these refi included?
These are purchase applications. I'm glad you asked. These are purchase application. It does not include refi. Okay. So as far as purchase applications are concerned, the number of application dropped from close to 50% from last year. I mean, look, right around this time of the year, this is the home buying season, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we should have a lot of applications, purchase applications, especially, if you take that coronavirus factor out of the equation. Right now, with low interest rates, interest rate is what, 3.5 for 30-year. I mean, jumbo loan might be a little different, but conventional loan rate below 3.5, and then we do have, we are in the home buying season, so it should ramp up. But of course, the coronavirus factor kind of throw us off, the wagon a little bit. So we are experiencing some drop off in applications. But there are, of course, the coronavirus pandemic did cause, pending sales to drop, and there are some reasons, or I'll give you some ideas why, pending sales would drop. Yeah. Obviously, we don't have any more open houses. Now, the results that I'm going to show you, they're based on our survey data.
Mm-hmm.
Our survey data that we are actually conducting on a weekly basis now. We sent out a survey to our members, and we asked, whether they have had any open houses canceled. The number have been pretty consistent. Over 2/3 of the open houses have been canceled. Now, you might ask, and some people actually ask me in some other Zoom meeting or webinar. So they're asked, okay, so um, the other third of those members actually had open houses. I would say this. Actually, those actually may not have any listings. So those people may not have any listings, and that's why they're not saying that their open houses got canceled, because they don't have any deal right now.
Right.
So I think most people are actually not. A lot of people are actually not doing open house unless there is a vacant house. There is some specifics that you can do as far as best practice is concerned to do open houses, but most people are not. And then you have a lot of people, 90% based on our survey, saying that their clients kind of hold back a little bit. There are different reasons why buyers are holding back. I think you probably have experienced some clients hold back. Now, of course, one thing is those buyers may be concerned about their financial situation, right?
Yeah.
I said, how many people lost their job? Like 22 million, right? There's got to be some that will say, well, I'm holding off for now because I'm concerned that if they haven't lost their job, they're concerned about losing their job. But also, you and I talked about the market, the financial market.
For us here in the Bay Area, that's the big one. Here, you got a lot of people that have stock, looking at their stocks, going, "Make it stop! Make it stop!"
Right. And I think that actually happened. The financial market effect actually might have affected Bay Area a little sooner, because the financial market actually started dropping and tanking, by what total of 35%, 40% after it peaked in late February, right?
Right.
And the coronavirus pandemic concerns, or they declare a pandemic, I think in mid of or March 10th. So there is a lead time between the market dropping and then the coronavirus being announced as pandemic. So I know Bay Area probably suffered a little bit because of the stock market effect. And rightfully so for the Bay Area, people actually have more at stake in the stock market, I would assume, because there are a lot of tech companies.
Yep.
Many of the employees have stocks in the market. So many of them are concerned, so they're holding back. But the other, some of the clients, and correct me if I'm wrong, some clients are probably, or some buyers are probably concerned about, even if they are not financially impacted right away, they're concerned about whether prices will drop more, or prices will drop, I should say. Home prices will drop, and so they're kind of taking a wait and see strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not surprised, that some are doing that. And then some of them are actually withdrawing from an offer. We're seeing about 48%, nearly half of them, nearly half of the members said, buyers withdrew from their offer. And about a third of them actually had transactions fell out of escrow. A little bit higher than about 4 weeks, 5 weeks ago, 10% higher. Some I've heard have actually decided to just forfeit their deposits because they're concerned about what's going on, and some may actually withdrew from their offer because simply they lost their jobs.
Yeah.
A lot of different reasons. Now, so what I've shown you, the demand side, that's very important. The pending sales, closed sales, that's the demand side. But in order to determine whether home prices will make any move, upward movement and downward movement, we also need to look at the supply side, right? I know for the Bay Area, it's very, very tight as far as the market is concerned. I should say, was very, very tight before the coronavirus pandemic. For San Francisco or Santa Clara, you guys usually have about 1.5 months of supply, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
if that.
If that.
And that's one of the reasons why we have higher prices in the Bay Area. Let's look at the state. This is a chart that shows you the months of inventory. The unsold inventory actually slipped, a little bit in the current month. In March, we actually had the unsold inventory drop from 3.6 months to 2.7 months. So that's a dip. And here's one of the reasons why we are seeing, a dip in supply. We also ask on a monthly basis consumers whether it's a good time to buy or whether it's a good time to sell. The chart on the left-hand side shows the good time to buy. It looks like, in April, this is the April number. Looks like in April, we're still seeing 28% of the people saying it's a good time to buy. Still, it's not a high number, but it's didn't dip a lot from previous month. Look at what happened for sellers. On the right-hand side. Many sellers said, wait a minute, let's hold back. Let me hold off. I'm not going to sell right now because of many different reasons. It could be because of the shutdown. It could be because I don't want people to come into my house right now because of the current market conditions or current coronavirus conditions. Let's hold off. Let's wait till things got settled first. So sellers are holding back as well. In fact, about 80% of the sellers are holding back. Look at how it compares to a few weeks ago. 45% as compared to 78%. 45% was when it was first ordered. The shelter-in-place order was just put in place. But fast forward a few weeks, it has gone up significantly. Some sellers actually removed their listings from the market. I don't know whether you personally have experienced any of those sell or know someone who might have had sellers remove their properties from the market. But there are some increasingly more in the last few weeks. 60% actually removed their properties from the market. I think partly because they want to wait and see until the sort of economy started opening up again. Right. Then they want to see. But and we are seeing the actual number of listings on MLS actually showing the evidence that we got from the survey. It dropped from 182. Now, the very first week of the month of March, in the Bay Area, there were 182 new listings being listed in the first week, on average daily new listings. Now it's dropped to 110. That is something like a 35 to 40% drop. And if you look at how it compares to the state also dropped close to 40%. But another thing to look at is it's not just how much has dropped, but look at the trend again for the last few weeks. For the state, for the Bay Area, it looks like it's stabilizing. It may be showing some signs that, okay, well, we might have bottomed out. Some people may be starting to start listing again. Look at the state. It started bouncing back. And again, this is only 1 week. So right. It's hard to say for sure. And then by county, Santa Clara County, want to show Santa Clara County. It might have bottomed out a few weeks ago. It started bouncing back. It looks like we are seeing a little bit. And the bounce back is actually across the board, in different counties and in the Bay Area. So there might be good. This might be a good sign of things coming back a little bit. Now, it's obviously compared to what it was before, in Alameda, for example, it's still way below what it was before. But seems like it's picking up a little bit. If you look at these numbers, the last week, it looks like on a week-to-week basis, there are some states, some counties, they're actually bouncing back. So we are seeing some encouraging signs. The question is, how long is the impact going to, how big the impact is and how long it is going to last. I show you how big the impact is. I'm going to show you how long it's going to last. I'm not going to lie. I'm an economist. And an economist, we look at numbers, we try to figure it out, but no one single economist probably agree with each other wholeheartedly. And I'm showing you this table to tell you that, yes, economists disagree with each other. This is the economic forecast by different institute, different banks. And if you look at the first quarter, the number varies. But you can tell many of them believe that the economy is already in a recession. This is the economic growth rate.
Yeah.
Many of them show a negative number. The degree varies. Wells Fargo says 1.2, declined by 1.2, but JP Morgan actually says declined by 10%. Now, if you look at the Academic Institute, UCLA believes that it's in the first quarter we still had a positive number, same as Barclay. So they differ. But I think most people would agree in the second quarter that is where the hit is going to be.
Yeah.
We're looking at something like 30%. Forget about Barclays here. I don't think this number is realistic. 30%, 35%. This is significant drop. But shouldn't be surprised though, because I showed you some number earlier about the daily loss, right, on output. We showed the daily loss of output for California, it's dropping more than 30%. So it's not a surprise if we're dropping 30%, based on those retail sales, dropping 30% for the GDP is not a surprise. So second quarter is the big hit. Second quarter is going to be the hit. Third quarter, we are going to see a little bit of bounce back. Some still believe that like UCLA still believe we are going to see more dip in the third quarter before bouncing back in the fourth quarter. Now, just to put things into perspective, these numbers may not mean much if you don't know what happened in the fourth quarter of last year or in 2019. 2019, we had a positive 1.9% increase in GDP. So of course, when you look at all these negative numbers, you can tell that we are going to go through some tough time. Second quarter, third quarter, probably will pick back up in the fourth quarter. Now, this is something that may not be able to control by just by economists' projections, by the government pumping money. It will help as far as the economy is concerned, but I think the bottom line is it still comes down to how long the COVID-19 pandemic is going to last. So let's take a look at the projection. If you look at the projection in California for COVID-19, these are based on some models that the government used. It's from the Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation. It shows that we might have already passed a peak. If you look at this line right here, these are the number of beds that needs in a hospital. We might have already passed a peak. We are right here, and if this projection is correct, then in mid-May or so, number of cases will actually really die down. Now, this curve actually was a much higher curve before. 2-3 weeks ago, we actually have a number much higher than this. But because of everyone doing their part, social distancing and making sure that we stay at home, we actually were able, for California, we were able to keep this number very low. And it will continue to stay, hopefully will continue to stay at this trajectory. And then we actually could have very few cases in mid of May. Now, this also, this projections also assume that we are going to see continue to practice social distancing.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to say, after mid-May or so, we probably will still have some discipline, some social distancing measure in place. Don't take me wrong. Don't assume that, okay, everything will be back to normal in May.
No.
Everything will be back to May and normal in June. It's going to take a little bit more time. And that's why, the hit is going to be more than just, the second quarter, probably in the third quarter as well. Now, let me offer some ideas about, how long this could last by looking at some of the case studies.
Okay.
You look at what happened in China back in 2003 when we had the SARS outbreak, when we had another pandemic, well, not exactly a global pandemic, but an outbreak of the SARS, which is in the same family as the COVID-19, but an earlier version. We look at the Fukushima disaster that happened in 2011, and then 2015, the MERS outbreak. Those are all virus outbreak, and it hit the economy really hard. It hit the retail sales. What I'm showing you is the retail sales chart. So the SARS outbreak actually took about 2 months from the beginning until it hit the retail sales to the bottom. It took about 2 months or so, and then it started recovering. And the recovery took another 3 months or so. So if we look at it from that standpoint and look at Fukushima disaster also, the nuclear disaster in Japan, took about 4 or 5 months or so. The MERS outbreak also took about 4 or 5 months. So from the start of the outbreak to maybe somewhat of a recovery, it takes about 5 months or so. I believe the coronavirus pandemic is hitting us a little harder. So it may take a little longer, like 6 or 7 months, but we can probably see some sign of a recovery, in August or so, September or so. I mean, I'll be realistic. I'm not going to say we're all of a sudden in 2 months going to come back to normal. That's not going to happen. It's going to take some time. So 4 or 5, 6 months. So we're going to see, some recovery. But what about, so that's the economy. Now, the government are doing different things. You probably already know, the Federal Reserve have been keeping rates really low. We have seen some low rates. I mean, we see some rates fluctuation, but rates have been staying low with Fed funds rate down, all the way down to 0.25%. We have some, they started doing quantitative easing, and then of course, they created a lot of different programs to preserve market liquidity, to making sure that lenders and banks can lend to hopefully get the economy going. At the same time, the federal government, has been pumping money into the system, hoping to pump money into the system. There are a few things that's listed here. Some people receive rebate checks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Depending on the income level, some people receive $1,200 or $2,400, depending on their income level. And then, of course, if they have kids, they get additional money from the households. Some people are actually applied to SBA loans, the forgivable SBA loans. Now, there is a disclaimer on this one. The SBA loans, they originally did not expect that many applications. So last Thursday, if I remember correctly, Thursday, they ran out of money. A lot of SBA loans applications got declined. But here's a but. Yesterday, Congress did approve more funding. I shouldn't say Congress. Senate.
Senate passed
the
it.
Senate, I should say, Senate approved more funding. And then Thursday, tomorrow, the House is going to, the House is going to hopefully approve and get it done. And hopefully we'll have more money into the system, and people can actually borrow, from the SBA loans and help, to get through this tough time. And then, of course, you may or may not know, but you definitely have heard about the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, another program that the government is putting into a system. Now, these are programs. The PUA program is eligible for independent contractors, which include realtors. Realtors are not eligible for unemployment insurance, but they're eligible for the unemployment assistance for up to 39 weeks. But there is also a but.
There always is.
The PUA is a federal program, but a lot of people wanted to apply. The state EDD, they were not able to get the form in place right away. I think they set the date. The forms is going to be available, I think, next week or so.
Yeah.
So hopefully, they can get things straightened out, and hopefully people can start getting some help, at least in California and some of the other states. So with all these different programs, I mean, hopefully it will get the economy back in place. But we're still seeing, drop off in our housing market. We're still seeing some drop off in sales.
So, I've got a question for you. Going back a couple of slides on some of the things that are being done. Do you think that we, just a way to try and jumpstart the economy, do you think we'll go into negative territory on interest rates to the banks?
Chances are very unlikely. I know for some other countries, we actually have we actually have seen negative interest rates. I believe in Japan and maybe Germany. I
Yep,
think
sure.
we have seen some negative interest rates. But in the state of California, in the U.S., most likely not. I mean, right now, we should have seen interest rates or 30-year fixed rate now. I'm trying to separate, the conventional or mortgage 30-year fixed rate from the Fed funds rate. Now, the Fed funds rate, the Federal Reserve, they said they're not going to go negative, a few weeks ago. Would they actually go negative? I don't think so. But if you just look at the 30-year fixed rate, for example, the 30-year fixed rate, even though the Fed funds rate actually has gone down to 0.25, you would have expected, and I would have expected, rates actually to go below 3% for the 30 years. But in reality, it actually did not go below 3%. It has a lot to do with a lot of different things. I think the concern about risks is one of the factors that keeps rates from going down further. But the other part of it is the servicer.
That's
Some of
huge.
the
That's
service.
huge right now.
Exactly, the servicer a concern, and so there is a difference between how much the servicer actually will be accepting the application at what rates and things like that. That was a little earlier, actually a few weeks ago. You probably have seen 30-year fixed rate, for whatever reason, shot up to 4%.
Yeah.
For like a few days or so before coming down. So it's all about I think the concerns, the servicer's capacity to fulfill some of the applications, but also concerns about, what if, we have all these programs and we have all these forbearance. You probably have heard about the mortgage payment forbearance. We have all these mortgage payment forbearance, that applies on servicer, and servicers still have to pay the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. What if they can't take, some of those, they can't um, carry some of those forbearance? What's going to happen to those banks? Those banks. So they're concerned. People are concerned, and some actually decided. Some banks, some lenders decided, a few weeks ago, actually to do more refinancing than purchase applications because of that reason as
Well,
well.
I know for episode 2 of Chea Chats, when I talk to my lending partner Monique, I'm sure that we are going to get into some of these topics, because I know that for the servicers, they're having a difficulty, especially when you talked about the risk, Oscar, that if they want to close on a loan, they know that they may have a client that they just closed their loan today who may decide, well, you know what, the government's saying I can probably not pay one or two of my payments. The servicers are like, well, wait a minute, then how are we going to pay this off to the investor? So that's
Right.
making things very interesting in the lending sphere right now.
Yeah, and I'm very interested in hearing the recording that you have in your episode 2 about the lending environment, because it's a moving target right now, I think, and a lot of pieces moving around. So it's very interesting
Yeah.
to see what's going on. And like I said, I'm an economist, but economists can base on some of the variables. But I am actually trying to figure it out myself with all the other economists. So it's getting a little, tough, to really target it towards, narrow it down to our specific. But I think, we're getting a little bit better with all the information that we're seeing right now on figuring out, where the market and the economy is going. Now, if you look at the market, as I shown this a little earlier, it does show that, we do have some drop off in pending sales, in the upcoming months. In fact, pending sales actually dropped about 25%. So expect April to have poor sales performance. What about price? Now, I keep on, it's kind of dodging a little bit on, the price movement. Take a look at this slide.
Yeah.
If you look at list price, and this chart shows you the listing price versus sales price. Sales price typically follow listing price by about 4 to 6 months. But I don't think it's going to follow by 4 to 6 months. It's not going to have a lag of 4 to 6 months. But if you take a look at list price, it actually had a sharp drop still showing positive on a year-over-year basis, but listing price was growing at close to 10%. It dropped down to 4% or so. Sale price, you will follow very shortly. But I do believe that if you believe this, then it does suggest that sale price probably will remain positive, for the next couple months or so. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm not going to be that optimistic, but I'm going to say if you look at prices, a lot of sellers probably, it's not like 2008, 2009. A lot of sellers, they have to sell, right? Back then, because they were in default. You know, banks were collecting their properties back and then turn around and selling it. This time around, it's a little different. We do have some sellers who have equity in their home. They're going to say, well, let's hold off. I'm not going to list my property for the next month or two, but I'm not going to drop my price by 15%. If you negotiate and you want a 3% discount, maybe I'll go, 2-3%, but I'm not going to drop 15% just to entertain the buyers.
Or if you want
So
me to
a lot of
fix some items or give you some credits, we may do that.
Right. So, I don't think we're going to see what happened back in 2008, 2009. We are going to see some adjustment, some downward adjustment in price, some areas a little bit more than others. But at the state level, we do believe that, at the end of the year, for the year as a whole, we may actually see a 3 to 5% decline or so, single digit, mid-single digit, despite the fact that we will see significant drop in sales. Sales, no doubt, we are going to see because we missed 2 months, 3, 4, or 5 months of sales.
Yeah.
But price, I think people are going to hold off a little bit. Now, at the end of the day or the end of the year, yes, we're going to see drop off in sales. We're going to see some slight drop off in price as far as we can predict right now. We're going to see probably 10-15%. I'm just throwing some numbers out. 10 to 15% drop in sales, but probably not so much in price. Maybe 3 to 4, 5% in price. And part of the reason also is we still have very tight inventory, right? In the Bay Area, we had 2 months of inventory, maybe even less, because people are not listing now.
Right.
So compared to what happened in the 2008, 2009, the Great Recessions, we had 15 months of inventory at some point, 18 months of inventory at one point. So it's very different. So, at the end, I think we're still going to see in 20, yes, we're going to have a tough year this year in terms of sales, in terms of price, a little bit drop in price. But in 2021, I think we will have some improvement. Now, how long this is going to last? I mentioned the pandemic projection is probably going to control the how long the recession is going to be and how tough the market is going to be. So, if we judge by that pandemic projections, assuming we're not going to hit a second wave, then maybe in the third quarter, towards the end of third quarter, we started bouncing back a little bit. It's hard to rush back to normal. We can't, because we don't really control the time. The coronavirus actually control the timing of the how we can recover, and we are going to face some challenges in the short term, this quarter, next quarter a little bit, but I do think when we're back to somewhat normal, the housing market will bounce back. Sales will come back a little bit. Price is going to hold its level. Maybe if if you're trying to flip a house, that's a different story.
Right.
But a lot of people are holding the property, staying it for keeping the property as a primary property. 2-3 years from now, you're back to or even higher than what you were at the price level that you purchased. So I think the housing market is going to be a bright spot, especially since I think that interest rates probably will stay low. It's not low like 1%, but low like 3.5%. I think we will see, that level. And there might be some long-term behavioral change also. That is, now you and I both are working from home right now.
Mm-hmm.
There might be, some flexibility of where to buy a house from this point on. It may not necessarily be right next to your work. you could be buying home a little further, maybe take advantage of some low prices. Who knows? So there might be some changes, but it's too soon to say if there will be any changes. There will be, I guarantee you that, but I don't necessarily know exactly what it's going to be. Now, to wrap it up, I know, Will, I've talked a little too long, but to
Never,
wrap it up,
never.
but to wrap it up and hopefully to offer your audience some resources, at CRO, we do have a microsite, and this microsite will give you the very first line, give you some information, updated information about the coronavirus, but specifically for real estate industries, people who are in the real estate industries. We also have the COVID relief hotline. People who want to know more about the financial assistance program offered by the government, feel free to call that line. I think we have some experts to answer those questions. If you are still wondering what's going on with the fiscal stimulus program, you can get some answers there. We have a weekly newsletter. Will, I know you probably have been reading our weekly newsletter that has some the most updated information. And then there's some hotline information here as well. So hopefully I was able to provide some good information to you and to your clients. But I know you might have some questions. So, if you do.
You've answered all of my questions. But when I do release this recording, I strongly suggest that if folk out there do have questions, to send them to me, and we can definitely answer those in a couple of weeks. Maybe 3 weeks or so when you and I circle back around, Oscar, and just see,
Right.
to take a look at how the trends are doing.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd love to, talk to you again, because things constantly change, right? In the last few weeks, we have changed a lot. So I'm sure in a couple of weeks, in 3 weeks or so, we probably will have a slightly different perspective, maybe offer some new information. And hopefully at that time, I know, I have a hog, for half an hour and 5 minutes or so. Hopefully next time it will be a little shorter. I don't know if people have, that long an attention, but I love to come back and share with you some of the information.
Well, as always, again, this was our first time out, so we may run a little long, but you know what, Oscar, thank you, thank you, thank you. Information truly is power, and in times like this, we've got to look at the facts, and we've got to hear, the straight information, and thank you, thank you, thank you for just being a great resource, again, for that information, and we will
You're
see
very
you in a
welcome.
few weeks.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for inviting me again.
Thank you, my friend, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right.